Brachenlam, Tannellam, Brachenlam is Ugen, Brachenlam, Tannellam, Brachenlam is Ugen, Brachenlam, Tannellam, Brachenlam is Ugen, Brachenlam, Brachenlam is Ugen, Brachen, Tanne, 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 Brachen, Tanne is Ugen, Brachen, Tanne, 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 Brachen, Tanne is Ugen, Brachen, Tanne, 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 Brachen, Tanne is Ugen, Brachenlam, Brachenlam is Ugen, Rumba, 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 kuka, rumba, kika, rumba, 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 halaba, rumba, hika, rumba, 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 kuka, rumba, kika, I dance a rumba. Oh, shall she work the shuckle, shall she work the shackle, shall the fence and punchy trotty more and wickle, wackle, rumba, 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 kuka, rumba, kika, rumba, 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 halaba, rumba, hippa, rumba, 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 kika, rumba, rumba, yagi, Irish nabby, dance a rumba. Dan nog een makke versen aan is varren, is oily, talant over vakke vie, klinkje ukulele, rumba, 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 kunka, rumba, kikka.
Well, good evening and Falcha. I am going to bring straight onto the stream our guest. It's Paul McLaughlin over from Nova Scotia. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening.
Or should I say good afternoon?
Good afternoon.
Good stuff. And a huge welcome to our guest of honour this evening, Alasdair Gillies, MBE. Great to see you, Alasdair.
Thank you very much. Indeed, great to be here, Mike and Paul, meeting you for the first time on Zoom, maybe in the future in Nova Scotia.
Absolutely. Now, our themes for this evening, of course, are Glen Breton and Talisker. And we're going to get straight into a Glen Breton while we have a bit of a chat, because you've got quite a strong Nova Scotia connection. Is that right, Alasdair?
Very much so, very much so. And I must say, you give me a bit of amusement there playing that little bit of nonsense. I was talked into doing a concert on my 80th birthday in Skye, and happily the people turned out to suffer, and not altogether in silence. But that was a bit of nonsense, because it was a send up. Only the Highlander, or like every other nation, you can send yourselves up quite well. And this was an old teacher of mine, and Alec Mackenzie. He was a man who, wonderful guy, great songwriter, an actor. He acted with Peter Sellers laterally in his career. He acted with Paul Douglas in The Maggie. And I suppose that he was my mentor for a long time. And I suppose he gave me the idea that life is not just about living one profession. You can be a bit nomadic if you choose. My connection with Canada and Nova Scotia particularly is really way back in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
Program.
I was blessed, Mike. I'm sorry, I was blessed by giving the opportunity to take part and host a program called Cayley, which took over a slot which had previously been occupied by an iconic fiddle player, Don Messer. And the Don Messer show was just unique and had massive ratings. And there was a void there, and this Cayley program was a slotted in still at that. So I had great fun. Four years of it.
That's fantastic. And I've got a little picture here just to surprise you with. How about that?
Oh. Well,
so there you are. So we have Slainte.
When you were over here, you just didn't. The Cayley wasn't just in Nova Scotia. Didn't you also do cross Canada showcase as well?
That's right, we did, Paul. We because it was a net coast to coast program, we had a wonderful following right across the country, and it was ostensibly from Cape Breton Village Hall. That was the set, and we had I was told very strictly, make sure that every time you have a Canadian artist on, give their origin. If there's somebody from Kitchener, say Kitchener, because I was the non-Canadian resident. And that was a kind of sensitive topic, because I took over from a great friend, John Allen Cameron, from Mabou. I think he was from Cape Breton anyway. And John became a very good friend and a very good artist. But I got that particular slot, and it was a real privilege. We had dancers from Newfoundland, Newfoundland type dancers who their style was a mixture of Highland dancing and river dance. Wonderful. And of course, the backbone of the whole thing was Cape Breton fiddlers. That was the crunch. That was the real the coat hanger to put your coat on. That gave you a lift every time the program started. Cape Breton fiddlers broke into tune, and all the cares went over your shoulder. Fatigue out of your bones, and you just get a bounce into your step. It was fantastic.
Can I just say, I think I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to try something here, because there is one of these shows that's on YouTube, and if I can share my screen, I might just play a very short bit of the intro that's online. Do you want to see it?
Yes.
All right, let's see if I can get this to work here, and then we'll actually see it. So here we go, and then I'll pop this up. Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see it.
So there we go. Can you hear that? So there you go.
Well, that sounds a lot back for me. Yeah. It was a privilege for me, because I was commuting backwards and forwards to Canada for 4 years. I would go over and do about half a dozen programs, record them, then back. And meanwhile, I was running a dental practice, and I would just take off as though I were going on a regular holiday, and that was the way I did it.
That was what I was going to ask you. Did you live out in Canada at the time? So how long would you go over for at any one period?
Maximum a month.
Right. And was it Halifax that you stayed in then?
Always Halifax, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the studios there were in Bell Road, TBC Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a great family atmosphere, just superb. So, I wouldn't have missed that. And I got commuting so much, I got to know all the Air Canada stuff. I used to sometimes go on board the plane, and we could take musical instruments with us on board. We'd end up having a ceilidh on the flight deck. Fantastic. Wow. Before health and safety and all that kind of thing.
You're saying that you had Newfoundlanders dancing with you. I'm originally from Newfoundland and moved to Nova Scotia sometime later. And I can tell you that the Newfoundlanders can dance when they want to.
Now, gentlemen, do you...
Right there then, Paul, at the same time, there was a group called Ryan's Fancy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Irish Rovers were from Vancouver.
Yes, that's correct. Well, Newfoundland had a where Nova Scotia had the Scottish influence, Newfoundland had the Irish influence. So, with a Scottish name living in Newfoundland, I got the best of both worlds. That's, I couldn't go wrong when it came to enjoying dancing in a little Ishkadal.
Yeah. Oh, it's a special part of the world. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yep.
I loved every minute. I can remember.
So do you all have our Glen Breton in our glass? Are you charged with your GB10?
This takes my mind over to Cape Breton, just drinking, sipping this. It's absolutely super. Soft, gentle, and good. Oh, no, I'm not.
It's a nice colour as well. You recognise this glass, Paul? This is the glass that came in the set that Todd's brought over for me, the little Canadian box, which is where I got this whiskey actually from him. So I'm from you guys. Sorry, so I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of this as well. So that was the little letter from you, Todd and Kirk, and the box that was made. It's sitting behind me here, and inside. Were the two of the whiskies that I'm having tonight. Absolutely beautiful. So thank you for that.
And Todd handmade that for you.
It's just beautiful.
It is beautiful. Yeah, he's a talented guy.
Well, I'm enjoying this, Paul, I must say. Because when I was in Cape Breton, there was no distillery there at all.
No, sir. Well, there were distilleries, but they weren't legal.
Oh, well.
So was it 1990 that it opened, Paul? Is that correct?
Yes, they first distilled, I think, 20 barrels of whiskey in 1990 before it turned. They started, I think, building in '88, and it went through a couple of hands before it got into its current owners, which happened before. So it was a really interesting story because when they were committed to not releasing anything for 10 years. Where some distilleries would either make gin or something else, they just didn't. They wanted to make the full 10 years. And when they released it, they couldn't release it as a Canadian whiskey because they're doing a malt whiskey in the Scottish style. So they were kind of in this purgatory of what they could call. They couldn't call it Scotch whiskey because they're not making it in Scotland. They couldn't call it Canadian whiskey because it didn't have the flavor and crop and character of a traditional Canadian whiskey. So it's single malt, Canadian single malt whiskey is what they started using. And about the same time that the Scotch Whisky Association came down with some lawyers.
I'm sure they did.
It's a very smooth and very beautiful dram.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
It's definitely quite.
What's that, Mike?
For me, I don't know if Paul, you get Highland toffee.
Maybe with vanilla in it or something, or that sort
it's
of.
Kind of Highland toffee kind of nose and taste to it. So it's a kind of toffee sweetness.
So when the way they do their stills, there's something of a floral and cereal character at the same time.
Yeah.
They make spirit. Where they are, the Glen Breton name, comes because they're actually sitting in a geographical glen where they get their water from, and they also have orchards nearby. So over the course of their 10 years of maturation, you get a lot of the influences from the glen, which would be the heather and the apples from the orchard, the fresh mountain air that's coming down through. And of course, over 10 years, where they're using ex-bourbon barrels, you're going to get that coffee and you're going to get that bit of a spice character from the oak. And it is a slow maturation. Over 10 years, you get this really nice balance between what the spirit is giving you and what the oak's going to give you.
And what kind of grain is it then? I mean, it's to me on the first sip, it reminded me a little more of grain whiskey than malt whiskey.
No, it's barley. It's 100% barley.
It's barley.
Yeah, we use unpeated barley. Back in 2003, 2004, they actually brought in some peated barley and ran that through and created some very good, I believe, peated whiskey. I have a few bottles here that once it gets 12, 14 years, it's delicious, really delicious.
Mm-hmm. And this is mild. Is this mildly peated then? Is this got a bit of smoke in it?
No, there's no peat in that. That was unpeated barley, no.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I was picking a little bit up there. I think it might just be the kind of the pepperiness I'm getting more than the
pepperiness.
Yeah. Paul, when you're taking it, how much water do you put in it? What's your preference?
You know what? I don't put a lot of water in my whiskey because what I typically do is take small sips and let the mouth water take care of the dilution for me. Now, that being said, a lot of whiskeys I have here from Glen Breton are straight from the casks, and they're running 64-65% alcohol. I will add a little bit of water to those. Would I normally put water in my whiskey? It's usually in the summertime, and it's in ice form to make it a little cooler, make it last a little longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. When you're taking it with if you put a little water, it is definitely for sipping.
Yes.
And a little whiskey can go a long way.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of water, a little whiskey doesn't go very far.
Well, I was sitting one night with a gentleman by the name of Hunter Jackson in Ireland. He's a barley grower there. And we were sitting up one evening finishing off a bottle of his. And, of course, he would have his dram, and then he'd take a bottle of water, and he would cut it twice over. And someone asked him, he said, Hunter, why do you put water? Do you feel it releases the aromas? Does it make it easier on the palate? Do you get more character out of it? He said, no, it just lasts longer in the glass.
Interestingly enough, Paul was showing the glass there. This particular little decanter in the shape of a still has got the map engraved here of Islay. I got it in Beaumont from the I used to go to Beaumont, the Morrison's distillery in Beaumont quite a lot. Mm-hmm. There's a lovely little decanter for water. We could put whiskey in it, of course, if we wanted to.
So what's interesting about that is that the stills at Glenora have very similar style stills.
Right.
You say that again? I lost that. I don't know if that was just me. I missed what you said about the stills.
The stills at Glenora are shaped similar to the Balmore stills.
Ah, okay.
Interesting. Yeah. What I'm also impressed by, Paul, is the marketing of the pamphlet. I got a pamphlet in one of my bottles of Glen Breton. Beautifully presented. You've got living accommodation in the distillery area, in the campus. But also the Gaelic they use is impeccably correct.
Yes.
That's so impressive, to do that. They've got a couple of really nice phrases, spelled perfectly, and it's what I would expect from Cape Breton, to be honest with you.
Yes, and there is a lot of Gaelic still in the Cape Breton heritage and culture. We even have a Gaelic college in Cape Breton.
In St. Anne's, is it?
Yep.
Yep. Right. The other drink I think of in Cape Breton is rum, hot buttered rum, because I do remember going on a weekend visit. Cape Breton went to a dance in Glendale. Buddy McMaster was playing. He and the piano player. The whole evening was just fiddle and piano, and the place was just buzzing. And during the following day, we went on a walkabout tour. We went to a little house with the man Donald Beaton, an elderly gentleman. His wife was there. Donald had 12 fiddles in the house, and he had a harmonium. His wife played this harmonium organ thing in the parlour. And we ended up having a really good ceilidh. Now, we had taken some rum, it was winter time, February, I think, if I remember rightly. And Mrs. Beaton was being very protective. I think she was worried in case Donald would just take one too many. So we duly finished whatever we took in, the half bottle, that was finished. But Donald went to the front door, and when his wife wasn't looking, under the flagstone, he pulled a half bottle of rum from under the flagstone in the front door, so stocks were replenished. But it was a rum-based drink I was thinking of for Cape Breton, not a whiskey.
Rum.
There you go. Well, I tell you, this is going down very nicely, and as I say, it's for me. There's a nice combination of the kind of toffee and the kind of peppery spices, and it doesn't linger too long either. So it's quite. For me, it's quite peppery straight away, and then it falls off fairly quickly, and you've got that nice kind of vanilla flavour that kind of lingers. It's really very good, very nice. It's beautiful.
Oh, it's a great. I really like the 10-year-old. It's when they dialed everything in and making good whiskey from 10 years on, everything else is gonna be really, really good. The rice whiskeys, the older ones, repeated ones. Yeah, it's hard to find fault with the whiskey, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Paul, the younger ones, or is 10 is that the optimum one they produce?
10 is the youngest, and then they have stuff that's lasting a little bit longer. And because we have such a really well-established wine industry in Nova Scotia, they've done some really good iced wine finishes as well. Mm-hmm. Which I think, I don't know if you have one, Alasdair, but I think Mike has one as well. The 10-year-old.
Well, I don't have it with me, no, but I've tasted it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I think if you, do you have that there, Paul? Because we can have a little taste of that if you like now.
So I got the 10, and I got a 17, and I have a 19 as well.
Wow, very good.
And the 10 explodes really well with some great flavor. There's no doubt.
Mm.
But I don't know if you can you buy Glen Breton whiskey in Scotland?
I'm fortunate I've got a good number of relations in Canada. Mm-hmm. And if they're coming over, they bring me something like Glen Breton.
Glen Breton is doing some great things with their, they're at one point where they were not unheard of, but over the years, their fandom has exploded to the point where they're shipping to Russia by the pallet. It's really become a worldwide whiskey, just straight out of nose.
I remember when I used to tour around coast to coast, I got sponsorship from Buchanan Black and White whiskey. So I used to go to Charles Street in Toronto and meet there, and they would supply, whenever we went to be in someplace in Toronto or Ottawa, we would supply a couple of cases of Black and White, not for personal consumption, for promoting it. But it was fun. Loads of fun out there. And there was a man in then alive, the late Alan McLaughlin was from Cape Breton. And he, in the time of Trudeau's government, was Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Alan McLaughlin, and a great Gael, and loved his Gaelic music. So I got to know him pretty well. There were special days.
So how did that connection come about with CBC then? I take it, I mean, you were obviously well known on the circuit, and there was a number, you had albums and things, so I take it you had quite a big following there.
I was asked to go out, Mike, and guest on a couple of pilot shows, and I did that, and John Allen Cameron was actually hosting them. So I guested on those two for New Brunswick, and I did those, and I also did a program called Sing Along Jubilee. Sing Along Jubilee was non-stop music, and it was the launching pad for a girl, Anne Murray, from Cape Breton. Became a big country star. So I did that, then came back from there, and about a year later, I got a call saying, we'd like to put this program, Kaylee, on the network, and would you be interested in being host? So that's how it came about, and off I went. And as I say, I knew John Allen Cameron very well, so it didn't disturb our friendship in any way, because he was just a nice guy, and that's the way the business is. So I had 4 years doing that, and then 4 years going all around the country. And the great thing about the television then, there weren't so many channels. When you went to Vancouver, for example, everybody knew you from the Cape Breton program, and they would say to me, how are things back home? And I would say, home? Yeah, in Cape Breton. So they were under the illusion, which is what we were trying to do, that you're hosting a program from Cape Breton. Great fun.
So they thought, did they think you were Canadian then? They thought you were from Nova Scotia?
Well, people's their attention span on television, they devour what they see. And I was hosting a Canadian program, and they just assumed I was living. Because there were people there in Canada who were more Scottish than me in many ways. But they kept their roots, their West of Scotland roots, their accent, and although they lived in Canada, I was with the West Highland accent. I think it was less obvious that I was saying. Anyway, it was good fun. I was going to say, and life's about living. Slainte.
Slainte. They're both nice whiskies, Stuart. I like the Tam de Villa Sherry. It's a nice daily dram. It's not expensive. It's a great dram. And Craig's on the 10-year-old Arran, again a favourite distillery of ours.
Well, it's a great whiskey.
And a good suggestion by Fiona here, a belated Burns toast, and we're still very much in Burns season, so that sounds like a very good idea. Alasdair, would you like to give us a toast to Ravi?
A toast to Ravi?
Aye.
Why not? His contribution has been fantastic in poetry globally, and I don't know of any other poet who celebrated across the globe in the same way. Wonderful, wonderful songs, love songs, songs observing society, John Mouse, the Holy Willie's prayer, standing up with the pious hypocrites. He had this great panache style of just getting to the have a good. And the man's a man for all that. I think that is, to me, the ultimate song. That you could if you lived that song as it's presented, the world would be a better place. Yeah. And I often thought, if I had to choose a Scottish national anthem, my choice would be Auld Lang Syne. I know it's globally known for what, but the very fact that you join hands as brotherhood of man, I think what a message that would send across the globe. It'd be fantastic. I could see it in Murrayfield, even with English supporters as well. But yeah, I think that would be a great anthem. So here's to here's to Slainte.
Slainte. Well, that ice whiskey is gorgeous as well, Alasdair. That is, so I believe that the whiskey is finished in ice wine casks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And ice wine, I had to really. I'm not a huge wine buff, so ice wine is basically where the grape is frozen while it's still on the vine.
Yes. So if your ice wine can only be made in certain times of the year, obviously at the end of the year when things are frozen, only certain areas that can hold a grape frozen long enough to get it before it thaws out again. So when they know it's going to be a cold night, certain grape styles like Vidal, they will call everybody in and say, all right, grapes are frozen, let's get them. And you only have a couple of hours to get all of these grapes off the vine to get them pressed. So as you're pressing the wine, the ice crystals are still in, but you're getting all the concentrated flavors out. And that's where you get your ice wine muscat. Yeah, very labor intensive, obviously very low yields. Ice wine is relatively expensive. What it's done right is a fantastic wine.
Yeah, and I believe that is the only, or certainly the world's first whiskey that is aged in ice wine barrels. That's their claim there.
And I think they use about 3 months in the ice wine barrel. They don't want to overpower their natural spirit, but it's just enough to give a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of extra citrus kick to it.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, it's certainly unique. It's certainly something different. If you're looking at trying, a whiskey that has a finish that's completely different, then that's not one that you'll get in many places. So, and it's a 10-year-old whiskey. Is it the same? I'm assuming then, is it the same whiskey that makes the 10-year-old then?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. And you can. I mean, if it's only 3 months, there is quite a distinct, flavor profile that is very different to the 10-year-old.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you had ice wine, you know that it stands out as a very specific flavor, very specific character, and absolutely, if you stick, you stick a relatively delicate but characterful whiskey in that ice wine barrel, it's going to lose that character, and you certainly don't want that with something like Glen Breton.
Yeah.
Do they export much, Paul?
They export quite a bit. Yeah, it's over the last couple of years they've gotten certainly more popular. Where they can move into certain regions, they will. I believe now they're even trying to get into more tougher places to get your whiskey into, such as the U.S. They've done really well. I mean, the pandemic notwithstanding, if you go places now, you will see a Glen Breton bottle in some of the better bottle shops.
Good, excellent.
I know they have one at the Pot Still. There was one on the shelf at the Pot Still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's certainly very nice, and I've been hanging on to these bottles since Todd brought them over, and that way. And I don't know if you ever get the same. You've got bottles on the shelf that you think, I'll keep this for an occasion. And I was going to open my Glen Breton 10 tonight, and the little ice bottle I've got here is fairly small. It's a smaller bottle, and I was going to leave that one. I thought, well, when am I saving this for? Let's get it open, and I'm glad I did, because it's beautiful.
It's good.
That's a weakness in Zoom. You can't pour it across the screen. It's a real frustration.
Indeed. I will save you a Dram, Alasdair. I'll send you a sample of that one.
Good. I'm recording this conversation now,
There's a few witnesses. So
I should tell you, Paul, that in my nomadic career, I also was on the staff in the dental school in Glasgow and at the university, and had a couple of longish spells there. And I was digging through Fun-Year magazines a couple of nights ago, and there I came across Mike's 1999 magazine, and I can't. There were lots of things in it might have embarrassed people, but not Mike, because they were described as a suave gentleman. If he wasn't going to do dentistry, he would be a rock star. That's right. So to that anyway. I got to know Mike for the first time when I was in the staff, and Mike was an excellent student.
you were under his tutelage, were you, Mike?
I was indeed, and not only was I under his tutelage, Alasdair was my very first supervising clinician, so my very first patient in the chair was supervised by this gentleman here. Yeah. And it went on, the story gets better, because in my third year, they let you loose on the denture patients first, because there's only so much damage you can do as a student with false teeth, Lots of stories about people who've gone away with a wax trying and they've all fallen out in their soup, But my grandmother became a patient of mine. And, when she, it was actually my great-grandfather who removed her teeth. Initially, he was a dentist. And she agreed she needed new teeth, and she would come to the dental school, and I would get my points for a new set of dentures. But of course, she said to me, under the understanding, nobody ever gets to know that I've got false teeth, and I'll be very upset if this gets out, I don't know what she thought people thought, she had these perfectly white, straight teeth. So I agreed. And it was actually lovely, because I would go and pick her up from her flat. I would drive her into the appointments. We would have a spot of lunch, and it became a really nice thing to have done from that point of view as well. Firstly, on the clinic, Mr. Gillies appears as the supervising clinician, and this is when I learned about Alasdair's second career, because as far as I was concerned, he was, Alasdair Gillies, supervising clinician. And my granny just about fell off the chair when he turned up. It's Alasdair Gillies! And of course, she never knew he was a dentist. She knew him from his music. So, from her telling me, you mustn't tell a soul that I have false teeth, try and stop her telling her that she had false teeth and they were made by Alasdair Gillies and her grandson,
I love it. Lovely.
And I can tell that story now because she's no longer here to get me into trouble for letting on that she had false teeth.
And no one, having joined forces with yourself, nobody would have known they were false anyway.
Oh, of course.
So, Alasdair, as you were progressing through your dental career, and we know that you got the chance to go to other countries, did you ever have a chance to really work your dentistry and your music together?
What I did, one of the reasons I left the university and left the hospital academic life was that I couldn't combine appearing in like the King's Theatre in Glasgow with my name up in lights and being incognito in university in the hospital, and I felt that was kind of difficult and embarrassing because I'm not a show busy person really. So on one hand, you're keeping yourself profile low, professionally. Your name on a professional plate was only to be 1.5 inches maximum high. On the other hand, in show business, it had to be the bigger the billing, the more successful you were. So it was quite a difficult conflict, Then I went into group practice at that stage, and I just wandered around, and I've been very fortunate, Paul, very fortunate.
And so you, I recall you saying, were you at music school at the same time as dental school then? How did that work?
Yeah, I went to the Academy of Music, the RSAMD, as a part-time student when I was doing dentistry. Then I went into competitive singing, Glasgow Music Festival while I was a student. And then in summertime, I would do a singing tour. I think in third year, fourth year, I toured the Southern Island, everywhere, from Cork City Hall, Dublin, Waterford, Limerick, and then that was my holiday back home. So it was fascinating. It's just a wonderful opportunity. That's all I can say.
How many albums do you reckon you released in total?
About 24.
Wow.
There's one there.
Inverness, I recognize that one. Yeah.
For our viewers, that's an actual album and not like a weird colored CD.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that might. You've done your homework.
I have indeed. I kind of loved when we last had an interview chat. I loved your take on the I guess the commercialism of Scottishness, and you talked about how the biscuit tin kind of element of being Scottish, and you talked about how lucky we are as a nation to have so many kind of unique selling points. We've got bagpipes, we've got whiskey, there are so many different things, and the words you said were there's so many things that small countries would love to have as unique selling points.
Well, that's right. I would say the same again. I think we are very fortunate. We have a really strong identity.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be in any way embarrassed about it. Not at all. I mean, well, pipers are world-renowned piping, and until Canada started to get in the way, take over. And Northern Ireland as well, some really fine bands. But then every part of it, even the music, okay, there's a lot of fairly ersatz, music halls, Scottish stuff, which maybe is never been a cup of tea, but it does give pleasure to a group of people. I think that's the most important thing of all. I mean, Harry Lauder is, a lot of people would knock Harry Lauder off his pedestal now, but Harry Lauder for his time was amazing. He wrote some really good songs. Keep Right On to the End of the Road as an example, and also a very good singer. But so it's all very easy to sit back and be dismissive of something like that. And look at you've already said, Scotch whiskey, music, Gaelic language.
I find it interesting though, because again, the point you made before was you were saying in some ways Scots are a bit they kind of belittle part of their own culture as being a bit kind of cheesy or a bit twee, but actually we're so fortunate to have all of these things,
They do that, Mike, until they go to a place like Singapore, and I can testify to having gone out to sing in Singapore. And there were about 400 people at a Barnes night, or a Caledonian night, all resplendently dressed, tilted, evening dress, proud of their Scottish heritage. And all these Scottish clubs in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, they were hugely respectful and contributed immensely to the social scene. So, we punched above our weight, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. It wasn't until I did the diploma with Paul at the Edinburgh Whisky Academy that I was comfortable even with the word Scotch. As a Scotsman, I didn't like the word Scotch because usually when I heard that, it was somebody English and it was followed by another word. For me, it's whiskey, and I would just call it a whiskey. But during the diploma, Vic was talking about how protected a word it is, and it's like champagne, and it's actually a very, very privileged word across the world. And I think probably folk in Scotland maybe don't appreciate that the word Scotch carries a lot of savvy, a lot of weight with it, a lot of clout. So now I'm quite proud and happy to use the word Scotch, and that's a great link into picking up the Talisker 10. Do you like that? So, yes, we're on the Talisker 10. Is that the 10 you've got, Alasdair, there?
The 10 is here.
Yeah, grab your 10.
I've got a glass with the Isle of Skye etched on the
nice.
glass. You see that?
Very good. Slainte.
Now this is going to blow the palate a little bit after the gentleness of Glen Breton. I just have to nip it. All right.
I love Talisker. Talisker is a beautiful whiskey. I love it. I always have a little Talisker sitting in the background somewhere around here. And the Isle of Skye is a beautiful, beautiful place.
That was very nice.
When you drink the whiskey and if you know the place, your mind is taken to the distillery, the shores of Skye. My mind just goes straight back to Skye and experiences when I've shared a Talisker, when I've been out fishing, after fishing, and back home, and it's a really warming spirit. I have a very amusing story to tell when I was doing a singing tour of the Western Isles. We did in Benbecula. To get back from Benbecula back onto Skye, the boat was only going to go every second or third day. So you had to leave immediately the concert and dance was over and drive to the pier. And in Benbecula, they judged the success of an evening as to how long it lasted. So they would say, well, the last dance didn't finish till 3:30. They expect you to go on to 4. And inevitably you did. And then drove all the way to get the boat straight to Skye. Well, the next day, when I was in Skye at a concert that night, I was feeling as though I had a sinusitis. I thought, I'm really not going to be able to sing tonight. And I met a local hotelier. And he said, I'll sort you out. He said, and he poured me a Talisker. And it sounded sacrilegious. He put it in the microwave. He said, you don't have to drink it, just sniff it. Well, I tell you, it was better than Friar's Balsam. It was incredible, the volatility of it. Just cleared the tubes. It was amazing. I'm not suggesting you go and do this yourself, but if ever you have a bad head cold, then I'd recommend a little Talisker, get it really warmed up, microwave or whatever, and sniff it. And it's the alternative of Friar's Balsam. No, I wouldn't recommend that.
Well, it is a beautiful dram. Now it took me a while to get my palate around, to the Islay whiskies, and I have to say, Talisker is one that I struggled with a little bit initially with my palate, but I've certainly warmed to it a lot in recent years, and that 10-year-old is a beautiful dram.
Someone said one time that Talisker was the stepping stone to Islay.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with that because, as smoky as it is, it's not a slap in the face like you'd get from Ardbeg and Lefroy. It's a great little introduction. It really is. And it has enough flavor to carry, throughout your journey of whiskey. Yeah.
Well, certainly this. I mean, as much as you get the peat from this, there is a real sweetness of a fruity, dried fruit kind of feel to it.
Peppery as well. The peppery thing to it.
Yeah.
Pepper's quite nice.
That's beautiful. Now, Alasdair, you've got quite a strong connection with Skye. What is your connection with Skye?
Both parents were from Skye. I was born in Glasgow because of economic reasons. The family came down to Glasgow, and then most of my education was Glasgow, apart from a very precious couple of years I was in primary school in Skye, and that was a lovely experience. Where with one teacher, one class, 25 pupils, aged from 5 to 12, and you were shunted out at playtime to clear the sheep off the playing fields or the field, not playing fields. But went to school barefooted, which I loved. I thought was just great. A sense of freedom that I had, having come from the city back up there, was gorgeous. But I was actually very, very spoiled too, because at that stage my parents and my sister ran a very wonderful hotel called Duesdale Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel and run extremely well now. And the gardens were superb, lawns. It was a magical couple of years, magical. And then I came back down to Glasgow, and I think, interesting, I've reflected on this, and I think that if you're about 8 years of age and you're mixing with other school kids of 10, 11, 12, I think you're learning a lot from the older ones. So I think that rather than having suffered from a disadvantage of one teacher, one class, I think I probably had an advantage. So that was great. And then of course, all my holidays were in Skye. My love of music. My father was I still now and again hear my father singing in radio and Gale. He was on the other day, in fact. School of Scottish Studies recorded a lot of his stuff, but he had a phenomenal memory for song. And I used to sometimes write down stuff for him. I became quite good at writing again. He wasn't equal to write, but he wasn't. He left school when he was 12. Went to sea. So it was a whole different life, you know. But he was a he was quite a good poet in his own way. He wrote a lot of stuff. And then, of course, the mods, the music festival, came along, and it was standard practice to compete every year at the mod. So that was it. So, as a kiddie, I started broadcasting children's hour. I was probably a right little horror, but I loved it. And with this balance of being a nervousness and anxiety of going on the stage, but I went on the Glasgow St Andrews Hall, which is the forerunner of the City Hall, or the Concert Hall, about a 1,600 seater, beautiful hall. I soloed there when I was 12. So it's been going a long time.
You sure have. I mean, I watched, if anyone's interested, if you go into YouTube and you type in, and obviously I give your age away here, Alasdair, but if you type in Alasdair Gillies' 80th birthday concert. What's that?
It was only 3 years ago.
Wow. Well, you're looking very good on it. And can I say as well that your performance that night was just superb as well. I mean, have you found that over the years your range has changed, or can you still perform the way you used to? Because you certainly seem to be able to that night.
As the waist expands, the range reduces. No, I would say that your technique changes, and I would not want to be showing myself off as much of a singer nowadays, because I wouldn't be doing things I did younger. A lot of nice falsetto things and a lot you automatic pilot. No, it's definitely not. It's time to just to let you enjoy the looking back and enjoy your Talisker.
Well, I tell you what's interesting. I mean, I went to see Paul McCartney a few years ago with my mum. That his voice has really changed as he's got older. But if you listen to his new album, he is writing and singing songs that are adapted to his range, and the music is brilliant. He goes back in his concerts. He's still singing the old Beatles stuff. Because obviously people want to hear it. He really can't perform it in the same way, but he doesn't need to, because everybody else is singing it. And it actually brings us to a nice question here from Stuart. He's saying, what was it like in Abbey Road studio? So you've recorded in Abbey Road, is that right?
That's right, I did. When I signed with Decca, I had 3 years with Decca, and that's where they recorded. Not the first one, but afterwards. The first one was in Edinburgh, and then I was taken out to the Abbey Road Studios, and that was a real thrill. And of course, again, the style of recording there, you had 12 tracks in an LP to do, and you had 6 hours to do them, start to finish. So none of this, what are you doing for the winter? I'm going to be doing an album for the winter. No, I'm going to be doing an album half bits in the morning and the other half in the afternoon. That's it. And the budget was controlled like that. But I do remember the excitement of having, say, 25 musicians lined up, an arranger, and I was in awe of the whole thing. I possibly would be more comfortable with a guitar, bass, and drums. But there they were. But that's the way they did it at the time. But very special.
Yeah, and I believe you recorded some Beatles tracks, did you not, in Gaelic?
Yeah, in my teenage years, I felt that Gaelic was stagnating. What an upstart I was. I decided it was time to use things like Beatles songs, country and western songs. And it became the managerial side. You see, the press liked little controversial bits and pieces, so they used that as a line. But what it did for me, when I was a student, I was flown over to Dublin, and I took part in a wonderful program called The Late Late Show. Mm-hmm. The Late Late Show was Gay Burns, an iconic presenter, absolutely loved nationally. And Gay did this program, The Late Late Show. It started about 10 in the evening, and it was open-ended, so it finished when it finished. It was fantastic. You just let it run. And the one I took part in was Spike Milligan was on with me.
Wow.
And Spike Milligan and a priest, I remember, that was pretty well it, and myself singing. Because I think the priest and Spike Milligan were on because Spike had been quoted as saying something very irreverent that week. It became quite controversial. So fight was on, and his irreverence was to be opposed by the priest. Was holding it to make a retort, and I was in the middle somewhere doing either Beatles songs in Gaelic, or even at the time I did the most ridiculous thing. I did Puppet on a String, which is a Eurovision song, when I did Puppet on a String in Gaelic, which was a lot of fun. And I had a Canadian, John Cowling, a Canadian television producer, director, and he had said to me, why don't you do Puppet and String in Gaelic? I could see the puppets on the screen dancing along the street. I said, don't be ridiculous. It just won't work. But then I contacted a great friend of mine, a man from Harris, James Mackenzie. And James, he took it on board. He said, great idea, I'd love to try it. And so he made the puppet and string, Gini Mira, in Gaelic. So we put the song together, and it just became very popular. Anytime I did on stage or in cabaret or things, always a great closer, a great hand clapper for the people to finish in a happy note. And the great thing about when you're on stage, I always get a good start, grab the attention, very good finish, and you can just make mince in the middle somehow, and play around with this stuff. That was my formula.
I think that's where we are just now. We're kind of in the middle, just mincing as we go. So
I just want to point out that for anybody listening, Alasdair has music that you can listen to on Apple Music. So if you're connected, then you can actually listen to Alasdair's music if you have Apple Music.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
I didn't
I'm
know.
listening to it.
you get a little plug.
Interested, perhaps. I hope you mentioned Decca Records. I got onto Decca. Well, the reason I got onto Decca Records was because I was asked. Ultimately, but before that, I wanted to record with Decca because I was recording for local domestic companies, and I thought I'd like to be up there, Decca recording, and the billing was very important to me. So I went down to London, and I went into a phone box in Portman Square, and I looked up Decca Records. Got an office, and I went along to the office, and I rang the doorbell. I can't believe it. And I said, I'd like to speak to whoever's in charge. He was George Martin. That's what you, yeah, George Martin. So in I went to George Martin's office, and I tried to tell him why I should be recording for Decca Records. And I would say he was very, very gentle and very, I think he was quietly amused. This young boy should come down from Glasgow and take the bit between his teeth and go straight to the office. Then he said, well, if you go get yourself a reputation on the boards and then come back and see us. Well, I said, I thought I could do the record first and then do that. No, doesn't work. So about 6-7 years later, I got a call from the A&R guy in the Decca saying, we've been watching you on television, would you be interested in recording for Decca? Oh, wow, could I? Yes. Absolutely. So that was my real introduction. But before that, I had gone down to London, just like Vic Whittington, seeking my fortune.
Fantastic. Brilliant. And so, Paul, have you been to the Talisker distillery? That's a question.
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, I was trying to contact them. I was interested in the whiskey that they've got. It's called Postri, but Rue, the way they spell it, is not either. I wouldn't spell Rue, Portuguese like that in Gaelic. So I looked at it to represent the town in Skye, Postri, the port of the king. And I emailed them and said, "Can you tell me, why you've spelled it the way you have, and also could you tell me the age of the whiskey because it's not on the bottle?" But there seems to be some virus about just now that uses the excuse for we're not able to answer your call just now because we're in hiding. So I never got a reply to that. But I got this Postri, and I haven't tasted it yet. I've saved it for tonight. And I suspect it will be very similar to what I'm drinking at the moment. But it's the distillery itself is. It's a fantastic situation. Yeah. On the coast there, a rugged coast, So I've been to the distillery, quite a few times, and it's nice. To sit and sip the whiskey is the most special thing of all, which I'm doing right now.
Indeed. No, I think that's the one. Yeah, you've got that whiskey as your wild card for tonight, so you're gonna sample that one for us shortly. I realised actually, Paul, I'd meant to ask you about. You said you had an interesting story, and it was a Glen Breton whiskey, and I whisked this over to Skye before I had a chance to ask you about this. The Battle of the Glen, was it?
Listen, Paul.
Yeah. When after 10 years, when the Glen Nova Distillery launched their Glen Breton Canadian single malt whiskey, the Scotch Whisky Association took offense to that because when you think of the word Glen and whiskey, you think of Glenfiddich and Glenfiddich and Glenlivet. So in their protectionism, which understandable because of the Scotch heritage of using that blend. They actually went like for the distillery saying you cannot use Glen Breton as the name. You just can't use it. That's ours. And after a couple of appeals, it took them the better part of 9 years in the Canadian Supreme Court to say we can use Glen Breton. Now the Glen Nova Distillery is putting in a geographical blend. So if you think about it in that respect, they can call it Glen Breton because they're sitting in a glen. They're making whiskey in the glen, and it's maturing in a glen. So once they won that in 2010, they released a 15-year expression called Battle of the Glen, and so this is my wild card tonight. I really like this whiskey. It's when you look at the 10 is got some beautiful character to it. I like a little more cask influence. So when you start getting the 14, 15 year, and I've said this before, I think Glen Breton really hits its stride for a little more character for my palate. So the Glen Breton 15, the Battle of the Glen, has a little more toffee to it. It has a little more spice to it. It starts losing a little bit of its floral character, but that is replaced with the nuttiness, like Brazil nuts and almonds that I seem to get out of an older Glen Breton whiskey. And I say that I get out of it because not everybody's palate is the same. Not everybody tastes the same thing. But once you start getting to those teens and late teens with Glen Breton, and that nuttier, richer flavor that I like, the Glen Breton really starts to show, and the Glen Breton is basically the tipping point of that. It's a really great whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great.
The Battle of the Glen, the Breton Battle. What was the battle about?
The Battle of the Glen. Well, see, when you use the word Glen in anything that's not Scotch whiskey, the Scotch Whisky Association is going to take it a task on it. That's their protectionism. So when Glen Nova Distillery used Glen Breton as their name, they said, the Scotch Whisky Association said, no. We don't use the word Glen. It took a trip to the Supreme Court and 2 appeals for the courts to say, yes, Glen Breton can be used to describe a non-Scotch whiskey.
I didn't realize it's taking copyright laws to that degree,
yeah.
Well, going back to what Mike said, Scotch whiskey. When years ago when we started drinking whiskey, I remember going to Scotland for the first time, and I said, Scotch, and someone corrected me. Someone said, no, in Scotland we call it whiskey because you're already in Scotland. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we realized that when you say Scotch, you are promoting and you are recognizing the quality of whiskey that comes out of Scotland, right? Yeah. And the Scotch Whisky Association acts in the interest of the Scotch whiskey producers to protect that, and it is a mainstream. You have to protect it. So, the Scotch Whisky Association, I think I read somewhere that they have, 360 to 400 active arguments against other entities yearly to protect the name of Scotch whiskey for the Scotch whiskey producers.
Yeah. It's such huge business as well.
The Scotch Malt Whisky Society in Edinburgh, I've been a member of that for donkey's years. So you were talking about we used to be Scotch, Mike. So
yes,
the Scotch Malt Whisky Society.
Yeah,
that makes it really kosher.
Indeed, absolutely. I think that's Jeremy Cooper on. He's having a Cragganmore 12-year-old.
Cragganmore from Ballinallach.
Yeah, that sounds very nice, Jeremy. So I might do my wild card, since how we're doing wild cards just now. So this was a whiskey that was given to me as a gift by a colleague about a year ago, and I've been trying not to finish it, but it's been quite a hard task because it is a beautiful whiskey. So this is a Douglas Lang special. So it says one of 383 bottles, charged from a refill hogshead. Currently, it's still, you can buy it online. It is between £90 and £100 for the bottle online. And I think one of the most remarkable things about this whiskey actually is the colour. If I can just zoom in here, because it is probably one of the palest whiskies that I've ever seen. It almost looks like New Make Spirit. It is so pale.
From a
yeah, and it's funny because it says on the bottle there, no colouring, and excuse my language, but no shit, because it's so pale. So there's definitely no colouring. We can take their word on that one. Now, I've got it in a nice crystal glass here. The nose, there's quite a warm phenol kind of nose to it, seaweeds and pepper. There is smoke there, but it's quite subtle, very, very subtle, very gentle. It is beautiful.
Are you taking it at the moment? Are you taking it neat or with water?
Just neat. I now very rarely take water, to be honest. I'll occasionally put a couple of drops in to open something up, but I rarely put water in these days. I usually take it as it's bottled. Percentage-wise, I should say this is 48.4, so it probably could take a little drop. You wouldn't want to put too much in. But to be honest, it's already, for me, it's already perfect the way it is, because it's quite light. It's a very light whiskey while still having this very typical Talisker taste to it, but it's almost kind of muted. So I think for somebody who hasn't tasted Talisker, who hasn't tasted peated whiskey, you say Talisker is a gateway to Islay. This would be a phenomenal gateway to Talisker. Again, it's got that kind of salty, maritime taste to it as well, and a kind of crushed sugar. It's very sweet. It's maybe a little sweeter than your average Talisker. And despite, I think for me the biggest surprise with this whiskey is how much complexity and flavour is in there for how pale it looks. Now, Alasdair and I have talked before about how deceiving a whiskey can be based on appearance. If you can't see it, how does that affect the flavour profile? Now, if I blind tested this and didn't see the colour, and then you lined up 4 whiskies that got gradually darker, I would not be choosing this one. Because for me, I would assume that the paleness meant it was weak and uncomplex, but actually it is complex despite its subtleties of the smoke and the flavour. It has lovely spices and saltiness and sweetness in there. So if you manage to get a hold of this, because it is obviously a little rarer with only 383 of them around. Well, 382 and 5/8 or whatever's left. Well worth picking up if you can get it for 90 quid. I think it's a steal. I might have to get on and buy another one before anybody else does.
Fantastic.
So that's my wild card, and it's a beautiful little dram. So it was Stuart Thompson that bought me that, so thank you, Stuart.
What are you?
I've got this. Talisker first 3.
Okay.
And normally I
Right.
would second word. So not really.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
And what's the percentage of that one, Alistair?
45 point, whatever it is, 0.8. Same as the Talisker standard.
Okay.
Yep. So I haven't taken it at all yet. So I'm just taking it neat. I think your recommendation, Mike.
Very few people do.
Quite pharmaceutical. Wow, peppery, incredibly peppery. Now that level, I'm not used to drinking whiskey neat as that, but I need it all, but it's quite astringent and it's volatile, strong nose, I would say. No. We've got a great love of seaweed carrageen, and I wonder how much of the influence of sea is in that. Quite a lot, I would think. No. I would say there's a good 2 minutes. Yep. Definitely to be sipped over an evening.
Sounds good. So is that finished in a port cask? Did you say? Is that right?
The port cask. Yep, it is indeed. So, do you see the dark a bit below on the label there?
Mm-hmm. It is very dark, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's darker than the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and again, you said that it's non-age, so you're not sure the age of it, so it's likely to be.
So I don't know about Paul. I'm always uneasy, Paul, about the trend now to put market whiskies with a name like Legend or the Highland Park Viking or whatever, And I think, well, hang on a bit. Tell me more. That's a marketing name. What's in the bottle?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a reflection on the shortage of 12-year-old malt.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to keep the coppers turning over from flash, so they'll produce younger whiskies.
Yeah.
Not all bad to do it. I mean, there are lots of whiskies don't have to be 12-year-old. Although I do remember going to Tomassin, Jock McDonald was in charge of Tomassin distillery, south of Inverness, and he said, his opinion, 12 years was a perfect age for whiskey. Some would get better, but not necessarily to that amount merited spending on a 25-year-old whiskey. But there's a trend now is to sell things at 6 years, or worse, don't tell the public what they're buying. Give them a name with a nice package. Mm-hmm. And it worries me that a little bit. Mm. But I was also saying, I think I've said to Mike about the importance of what you see. And what you see, how you see it. Mm-hmm. And I remember being on a trip to the Shetlands with some medical friends, and we had a night off, and he said, we're going to put you to test, all of you, and we're going to, all of it, blindfolded, cut off the nares, I'm going to pour you a sip of whatever, you tell us what it is. And it was amazing how many people were confused between Scotch, cognac, dare I say, and some people not sure. So the vision, the nose, so critical in enjoying and assessing what you're going to take.
Oh yes, I think it's so. I tell people this personally. Some distilleries make really great new make spirit, and the longer you age it, the more of that character you lose, if you like that. Some companies make, acceptable spirit, but does really well the longer you put it in oak. So I've had a 4-year-old Bruichladdich, which was just amazing, and I've had older, 25-year-old Ben Rins, which was really wasn't to my tasting. So if you talk about keeping people honest about age, sometimes age doesn't mean everything unless you like the flavor of an aged whiskey. If you like the age, like the wood influence of a whiskey, if you like what the oak does, then older age is going to do it for you. We know that it all comes down to marketing. We know that at the end of the day, a company wants to maximize their profits. There's no doubt it's business, right? What I tell people is, one thing that we have going for us that we never had 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, is the internet. So if you see something like Talisker Storm or Highland Park, anything with an age statement on it, you'll find somebody on the internet that has tasted these things that have a very similar taste profile to what you like. So before you go out and buy something, that's non-age statement, that might be 150 pounds, you can look at what other people say, and you can get an idea what it is before you blow your money on. Mm-hmm. That access to information, that access to other people's, opinions is one thing that we have going for us that can protect us from the possible gouging that we would get from some companies for not putting an age statement on their whiskey.
Yeah. I think a big part of it also, I guess, is the desire to secure future markets, so there's obviously a big push into getting younger people, males and females, to enjoy whiskey, and actually a big part of that is branding, it's marketing, it's using names, it's using gimmick, it's been in a certain cask or it's done this for younger whiskies, and part of that is to make it seem more exciting and get people involved. It's a bit. I was kind of thinking when you were saying, Alasdair, about the giving Gaelic music a bit of a revamp with puppet on a strings. I kind of see the non-age statements as the puppet on a string of of whiskies. It's a bit of fun, So I don't, one of the things I love about whiskey is the fact that there is that option. There's always going to be debate and conversation around which is best, and there's no question that there are some whiskies that are head and shoulders better than others. But it's a bit like music. I love the variety, and sometimes I'll want to listen to some classical music. I'm just in the mood for a bit of Mozart, and other times I want to listen to a bit of Iron Maiden, and I don't see the reason why there isn't room in my range, and of course a bit of Alasdair Gillies. There's no reason why there's not room in my range to enjoy all types of music. And similarly, as you can see behind me, if it says whiskey on it, it doesn't have to say Scotch. If it's whiskey, I'll put it on the shelf, and we'll give it a go.
Well, we know
the point you made, Paul, about the advantage of dialogue and feeding into other people's opinions. I benefited by the opinion of one of our members here, who posted a whiskey 2 weeks ago, and it was a blend of malts. And I read his review and I thought, sounds good to me. And I bought a bottle from London, email, and I was knocked out by it. I have no idea what age it was. Heavily sherry. I mean, it was really almost black, so dark. And I thought it was just amazing. So much so I bought it as a gift for friends. So that is an advantage. I have no idea of, I would say it's best time myself. But I don't know. Produced by Berry and Rudd, a London German-speak company. But that's thanks to somebody doing a review.
Yeah. It's funny, the Dentistry Whiskey Appreciation Group, was started a few years ago, with the expectation that it would probably be me, Paul, and a couple of other guys that would, have a whiskey on a Friday night and enjoy it. And the group is now got over 500 members, and it's a great way of mixing. And one of the things I love about this, here's three dentists sitting drinking whiskey, and I don't think we've even mentioned teeth once, and it's now an hour and 15 minutes in.
And it's a lovely Saturday evening. I feel more and more like my late friend Ricky Poulton. Remember his skits on the late When I Am Jolly, when he was giving the last call in the evening, and the program director had been drinking some vodka, and then when they said, "You're on in 10," he tipped the vodka into the minister's water, and and Ricky started with his very serious delivery, sipping the water, and as the delivery went on, he became more relaxed, and he started lounging back in his seat, and he was pontificating on things quite irreligious. It was really, so I suppose as the evening has gone on tonight, I felt much more relaxed. I'm on to my what is it, my Rogue's choice, or my
your wild card.
My wild card.
Your wild card.
When I tell people when you drink whiskey, you don't need whiskey to live. You don't need the whiskey to survive, but whiskey helps you live. You don't need music to survive, but it makes living a lot nicer. And it's the emotions that you get for things that you enjoy, that emotional charged feeling that you get. And so Alasdair has, this beautiful background of both of these things. So I'd like to ask Alasdair, what is one whiskey that when you have in your hand or you have in your glass that gives you that emotional response that gives you no other?
Well, this present one is just very, very good in case it doesn't come back to it again. But my favorites have gone over the years. And somebody mentioned Cragganmore from Ballandallas. That's a lovely, gentle whiskey, very smooth. If I wanted to really indulge myself at the fireside in the evening, after a nice meal, I would probably have a Lagavulin. And I would sit and post my toes to the fire and give myself a treat. But it's not whiskey. I would not taking it as a drink. It's too heavy and too specific. It's like a quick cognac.
Yes.
Savor. So yeah, I'm very nomadic in my whiskeys, I must say. And when I was in the Middle East in Riyadh, I tell you, Paul, any whiskey would have done, because there was no whiskey at all. Well, that's not quite true. It was illegal. But they only knew of one whiskey in the Middle East. That was Black Label, Johnny Walker Black Label. That was imported somehow through royal connections. So,
I was going to say the marketing of Johnny Walker is quite interesting. They were the first. They put the slanted label across the bottle, and apparently the marketing people realised that if everybody's labels were horizontal, the lettering could only be a certain height. If you put your label across the side, you could have larger writing. So when somebody stood at the bar after a few whiskies, the one they could make out was the Johnny Walker.
Good marketing.
Yeah. So you worked in the Middle East, Alasdair. Tell us a little bit about that. When was that you were out there?
Well, I think it was probably a middle-aged crisis I had. I was about 42. I was singing all over the place. Finished a tour of Canada and the States. I had come back. I'd seen this advert in the Dental Journal for a post in Riyadh, and I came back. I was doing it in the concert in the Eden Court Theatre in Inverness. Saturday night, came back about 2 a.m. and sat down with the Glenmorangie just to unwind. Picked up the magazine, saw the job advertised, and the answering service was on 24 hours a day. So why not? So I had a chat with the machine, and there was no interruption, so I was able to chat away to my heart's content. With a glass of whiskey in my hand, and I ended up from there, series of news, interviews, and then I thought, this is ridiculous. Why am I doing this? And there was an interview in London, and Angela, my wife, said, well, go down because the Chelsea Flower Show is on at the same time. Good reason for going. And I went down without any really serious intent. And then I was offered a job, and that gave me a dilemma, because I was then my singing career, to be honest with you, it was a pretty high level for me, but I didn't see it going anywhere else. And I just felt this is a chance to get out of the confines of a dental surgery. All my moving around has been with music. These dentists are giving me a platform to go traveling, and that's what we did. And packed the cases on a Saturday, Sunday, started read on the Tuesday, and yeah, amazing how I adapted. A little bit of trepidation at the beginning. My agent at the time thought I had gone taken leave of my senses, and I understand why, But anyway,
so you said that the house you're in, you've been in for many years. I take it you kept the house, but
we were there originally a maximum 2 years, and then I ended up staying.
10, did you say?
The job was fantastic. I mean, we had about 12 to 15 peripheral clinics with the main hospital, a cottage hospital, with King's desert trips. We had 100 of staff in the dentistry department. I was in charge of primary care, and then left it away the last 5 years, second 5 years. The senior consultant left, and I took over the department. And it was a wonderful, wonderful job. In charge of budget, standards, clinical standards, privileges. I set up the membership with Glasgow because I felt that everybody wanted to be a specialist out there. I said, but before you're a specialist, let's just get the basics right. Don't belittle the good practitioner. Learn how to be a good practitioner. Then you can take a stepping stone. So I set up the membership with Glasgow. And that was a really good, and some people, not just the salaries, but I got friends in England say, thanks for doing that. That was the best thing I ever did, to do the membership. It really gave me something extra for my time in Riyadh. So yeah, but that was another adventure, what can I say?
So was that before you were at HCI?
Yeah, I came back from there after the Gulf War. Went through the Gulf War, and yeah, that was quite interesting, scary at times. I came back from there, saw it through. A year later, I said, okay, stop when you're winning, time to go home. Came back with nothing. 3 or 4 months later, I thought, this is not good, you're sitting doing nothing. Then I got a call that I come back into university. That was good to be an undergraduate.
That's right.
I joined the staff again, and then HCI was a brainchild of a couple of physicians from Boston, Mass, Heracles and Levi, and they're 2 pediatricians, and they got a government support to open this hospital in Clydebank in Glasgow. And it was met with a lot of hostility. The people felt they were running private health care in opposition to the health service, which was part of the truth, in fact. So they needed all the clinicians were American, except anesthetics and dentistry. And I was asked if I could take over the dental side. So I set that up and worked there for 10 years. And there my Arabic stood me in good stead because a lot of the patients coming in from Dubai, the Emirates, and I could, for that time, I had mastered enough Arabic to make myself understood and take a medical history. So another little dimension. Things happen I don't know if it's by design, by chance, or whether it's divine intervention. I don't know.
Indeed. You mentioned the yearbook, the 1999 yearbook. It was myself and one of my friends and colleagues, Kevin, that actually we were the main editors of the yearbook that year. So I think that was the year you left the dental school, and of course you'd been a headliner at the dental school pantomime every year. And I think your quote in the 1999 yearbook as you left was, "Elvis has left the building."
I still have a photograph of doing the Elvis bit with the dark glasses and the wing jacket and the guitar.
Yeah. I think that might have been my idea, that quote. I was quite pleased with myself for that one. So
I looked at the magazines. I got about 14 or 15 of these magazines in a pile. It was quite a spicy one you did there.
Thank you. It was. There's a funny story. We were called in by the dean at the time, who was Wallace McLaughlin, is it?
Wallace McLaughlin, yeah, that's right.
And he brought myself and Kevin into the dean's office, and he said, we want to make sure nobody's offended by anything that you put in the yearbook. So we actually went round. Most of the people who were writing things about to say, look, this is what we want to put in. Is this okay? But I remember when we sat having this meeting, we had this great idea that because his name was the dean's name was Wallace, throughout the yearbook we would cut out tiny pictures of his head so that people could play Where's Wally throughout the yearbook. And the story is, myself and Kevin went in trying to be very straight-faced and serious about the yearbook, and as we were showing them some of the proposed content, and as we opened it up, this tiny cut-out picture of the dean's head flipped onto his tie, and we sat in the dean's office trying to keep straight faces while this miniature cutout of his head sat on his own tie, and it wasn't easy. So there we go.
Well, these magazines are great mementos. I got way back to my graduation year in 1960, and I got all the way through. I think I left the department. I went to Belfast for a couple of years, so I missed that a bit. And I came back, and about 66, 67, I was still there. Then I went away out again. I came back in about 1990. So, interesting. And it was interesting to see the changes in the hospital in that intervening period.
Yeah.
It was not altogether for the better, but some of the, I'm talking the background maintenance, standards. Yeah. But needless to say, the students were par excellence, yourself included.
Of course.
Fun memories, a good collection of students. Fantastic.
Yeah. It was fun times, absolutely. Yeah. Now we still have another whiskey to have, I think. Do we have Talisker Skye here? I think, Alasdair, you've got a Talisker Skye. Paul, do you have the Storm? Is that right?
I got the Storm, yeah. I got the Storm. The Storm is standard at the bottle store. I like this.
Mm-hmm. I kind of imagine the Skye and the Storm being of the same kind of ilk. I take it it's similar marketing, so non-age statements. Is that?
It's not too far off.
They're very similar, aren't they?
So what's the ABV on that one?
This is 45.8.
45.8.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's the same whiskey, just for different markets.
No, they're definitely. I've seen them both, so I know they're definitely different whiskies. I think. Did you maybe pick the Storm up in duty free? I wonder if the Storm is a duty free or an international exclusive. I wonder if that's where I've seen it.
When you see the that UK thing.
Yes. Yeah, so this one says for the UK market.
Yeah, we just got the ours. No, the Storm in Nova Scotia is part of their it's just on their schedule. So it's been available for the last couple of years. So
okay.
It's not a exclusive for retail. It's actually on our DC.
Okay. So this is it's quite dark, kind of goldy copper color. Yeah, it doesn't look too dissimilar to the Storm.
Which is yours? Is that Skye?
I've got the Skye, yes.
The Skye. Mine,
yeah.
Mine doesn't seem as. What's that?
You're maybe just not in HD. So I'm getting a kind of apple-y pear. An orange, it's quite citrusy.
That's as good for the sinuses as the other stuff.
It is.
No.
And you see, I know leaving this to the end was a good call because I've got a couple of bottles of Talisker Skye, and I've always found that actually quite difficult to drink. I found it very, very strong. Certainly if you had this as your first whiskey of the evening, I think I would find it a lot stronger. We're now an hour and a half in. But suddenly it doesn't seem quite as strong.
Lovely. Yes, I could be sitting beside a peat fire in Skye, sipping this.
it's quite a long. It's a long finish on this one as well, and it's there is a fruitiness, as I say, a kind of citric fruitiness, but that smoke kind of lingers, so the fruitiness is there to begin with, and then you're left with with this smoke that I've still got now.
Yeah, wonderful. My mind goes back to an occasion, Paul, Mike, and Skye, when I had finished a night's fishing, and I got up to a house by arrangement to go up to a nightcap, and there'd be about 8 people in the house sitting around the wall, and the man of the house with a bottle of Talisker, and he poured his dram and gave it to you, and he waited until you had taken it, and the same glass went to the next person. He just used the one glass. That was the round. I haven't forgotten that,
That kind of reminds me of a tradition that I'm very fortunate to have taken place in, and I'm sure in the current climate it might be many years until they actually carry it out again. And it is the tradition at Rangers Football Club at Ibrox of toasting the Queen from the Loving Cup. So I've been very fortunate, and this is a tradition that they do on the first home game of every single year. The cup was donated to Rangers from a football club in England. Every club in England had been given I think it was a coronation cup, and this particular club had gifted it to Rangers after Rangers played a fundraising game to help them after a tragedy or a coal mining tragedy that they had, on the condition that every single first game of the season they would toast the Queen with whiskey from this cup. So every New Year game, the whiskey goes in and it's passed around the director's room, and everybody toasts the Queen and drinks from the cup. So I was very fortunate that I managed to not only get into what's called the Blue Room, on the first, for the first game of the season, but I got to toast the Queen from the Loving Cup, and of course this thing is just passed around the room, and everybody is drinking from it. So I seriously doubt that tradition is going to perhaps go on in the same way as it once did.
I remember before I was married, I took my wife to visit my uncle in Skye, who's a bachelor living alone, and he, not necessarily, bachelors don't always live alone, but he was. And I thought we won't have a cup of tea with him because maybe the hygiene won't be the greatest. So we had a half bottle of whiskey, and we thought, well, that'd be okay. So anyway, we went, and he said, "Oh, we'll have a cup of tea," says he. I said, No, it's okay. We just have a wee whiskey, Uncle Charles. And I produced the half bottle of whiskey, and with great consternation, he said, "Oh," he says, and he was thinking in Gaelic, trying to speak in English. "Oh, do you see, he said, I broke the glass." "Oh. You broke the glass." "Oh, we'll have to use the teacups." So we used the teacup. We're trying to avoid having tea in, but we thought, well, and enter the germs there. They're okay. He only had the one glass, which sadly he had broken. He was trying so hard to impress my wife to be,
That's funny. Well, as I say, at least the alcohol would have helped to sterilise. I tell you something, Paul. I don't know about you, but some of the hand gels we've been using in the clinic, the alcohol hand gels, to me they smell like New Make Spirit. I mean, they really do.
Yeah, some of the spirit, some of the stuff we're getting over here is actually from Nova Scotia distilleries that normally would make whiskey, well, not whiskey, but rum or gin or vodka. So when you start smelling what's on your hands, it has the smell of New Make Spirit. Now, there's two good things about that. Number one, they're not using isopropyl alcohol. It actually is ethanol. And number two, I like the smell of New Make Spirit. So it's...
Yeah.
Indeed, but you might start getting some patient complaints that dentist smelled of whiskey. I saw him broadcasting on Saturday night,
So here's the thing. I saw this somewhere. It said the beauty about wearing a mask is that you don't know if I've had a dram or not. But you're right. but there's this thing about the ethanol and the rest of corporate alcohol. I would rather have my hands being washed in ethanol versus isopropyl. There you go. Oh, yeah. So I want to hear that story sometime, Nick.
Vic's able to tell the distillery that made the hand wash. That's brilliant.
There was hand sanitizer that was released in Nova Scotia, and they recalled it because they never put certain ingredients in it to make it a hand sanitizer. Because the bottle is 65% off. So we have a case of it downstairs.
Yeah, lost you a little bit there. You just you went a bit Dalek there for a second.
Exterminate. We had there's a distillery. Yeah, there was a hand sanitizer from a distillery in Nova Scotia that never put the necessary ingredients in it to make it a hand sanitizer, and you could actually drink it from the bottle at 65% off. So they recalled it, but they never got all of it in time. So there might be a piece of it downstairs.
Oh, fantastic.
I think it might be all the people who are watching will be sharing a dram with us.
I hope so. If they've lasted this long, then they have to have had a dram.
Yeah.
Indeed. Now, Alasdair, I'm going to ask you a quick question as well, because I think it was a few years ago that you were awarded your MBE, and there's a lovely picture of yourself and with you and your
Angela.
Angela, yes, indeed. So an MBE, I mean that's fantastic, and I have said this before, but congratulations. And this was for services to Gaelic music. Is that correct?
A variety of things, Gaelic music, the Gaelic language, charities, and show business, because I've been president of the Scottish Show Business Benevolent Fund.
Okay.
I gave up the presidency last month, but I'm still the financial director, financial convener. I'm chairman of the Gaelic Language Education Trust. We give grants to people who want to study Gaelic, who want to write in Gaelic, record, do CDs, multimedia, going to Seoul Monastic at the Gaelic College. So a mixture of things, it's very. These things come as a big surprise. You have no idea it's coming. Absolutely zero. I thought I'd done something wrong, and when the envelope arrived, it was something formidable. So I thought, oops. I'm sure I paid all my taxes. What have I done wrong here? But it was very nice, I must say. Very special. Having Her Majesty the Queen there also was really special. Really special. I mean, we pushed the boat out. We had a few days with some friends down in London. It was great. Well, something to be enjoyed.
Absolutely. Did you get to meet the Queen then?
Oh yeah, sure. And
wow.
I was surprised she didn't wear gloves when she shook hands. I thought they always wore gloves. I was very careful not to use a bone-crushing handshake.
Of course.
Give me my hand back. But they have her sitting on a dais, which is quite short, and I'm not very tall, but nevertheless, I was doing the relative heights to make sure she's on a little platform so that you're looking up to her. But the actual formality and the organization is just astonishing, most impressive. So that was everything was tickety-boo of organization, and I have to say I enjoyed it. Yeah, and
it's fabulous.
It's something, it's something to treasure, and I mean, you can see all the things like, I got this due to the efforts of other people, and blah, 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 blah. But no, it was really very specific in what they said, and I enjoyed it. There was a reflection. Angela, who has put up with all these things I've been doing over the years, I think that was a more special thing for her.
Yeah,
because she was able to enjoy the occasion, and having put up with mopping up after me everywhere I went. The dentistry, be it singing, where we're going tomorrow, or. And I used to do mad things. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. But I mean, if I did a BBC recording in Oban, which is about 85 miles up the road, I finished about 10 o'clock. I'd motor back to our home. I'd be in the surgery 9 o'clock in the morning. And when we moved to this house within an hour, I did a 10-week series in Edinburgh. And I worked on the surgery 9 to 5. I got the 6 o'clock train to Edinburgh, on stage at 7:45. 11 o'clock train back to Glasgow, home, back surgery in the morning. I mean, it's crazy, but I didn't want to lose an opportunity of what might be around the corner. And I always thought, you can't depend on this going on forever. Just grasp it in both hands. And the thing is, I was passionate about my dentistry. That's people say, how could you do the two things? But I'm passionate about dentistry, passionate about how I related to patients. And kiddies, I loved bringing children on from a nervous kiddie into a comfortable child patient. It's just great satisfaction. So yeah, I found dentistry was, for most onlookers, they would say, I don't understand this. I said, it's not just about doing an item of service, it's doing the whole package, the communication job.
Yeah.
There are so many aspects of dentistry. So I fitted into my persona very well.
That was one of the things actually that hugely influenced my career, believe it or not. And I don't think I've ever relayed this story to you, but on your clinic, the denture clinic, back in, I guess it would have been 96 or 97, I had a little lady who probably shouldn't have been on the student clinic. She was only getting a denture made, but she was terrifically phobic, very, very anxious. And I took a little extra time with her and did everything that you're saying now that I had observed in your mannerisms and your communication with not only with the patients but with the students under your tutelage, and spend the extra time with this little lady. And at the end of her treatment, and she was just a little old Glasgow woman, and at the end of her treatment, when we fitted the plate, she brought me in a Parker pen with Michael engraved on this Parker pen. And she handed it to me and said, "Son, you've changed my life." And she gave me a hug. And I knew from that moment on that the future of my career was going to evolve into that personal aspect of dentistry, the anxiety management, and the things that I could do to really change somebody's life. And that happened on the prosthodontic floor at the Glasgow Dental Hospital in the mid-90s. So there you go.
Well, lovely to hear, because I used to say to students, it doesn't matter where you are. If you go to Labrador and work out in the sticks, you can do some really good work. But I can give you a palatial premises, set of premises. You need not necessarily do good work. You're the person and how you conduct yourself. Obviously, your clinical abilities, but there's a whole package there of how you win people or win their confidence, and so they trust you. And when I went on to the interview committee for students, the admissions committee for students, the standard question I used to say to interviewees: what do you understand by integrity? And sometimes, worryingly, a blank look would come across their face. Because to me, that is such a vital part of the profession, absolutely critical. This integrity, that you trust what you're doing, you want the patient to trust that you're doing for them the best you can. So there's many dimensions to it. And there's some people who are maybe very good technicians who are maybe not cut out to be in patient care.
Yeah. No. There you go. I think that's the most dentistry we've ever had on one of these whiskey nights. Good that we did it though.
All I can say is, I'm great to meet you, Paul. And next time, well, who knows? It will be no lockdown, we'll be able to mix. One of my wishes now is to get back to Nova Scotia and to visit and take a trip round. Because I'd really love it.
If you get down this way, I will make sure that your trip is memorable.
And you live in Dartmouth now, not Yarmouth.
I live in Yarmouth, which is southwest Nova Scotia, but
Right.
I do spend a lot of time in other parts of the province for the secondary job that I do. So if you're going to find your way to Nova Scotia, I will get you up to Cape Breton again, and I'll get you down to the southwest again, and we'll show you around.
That'd be wonderful. Look forward to that.
They're great.
Okay.
I think we should make that happen. I mean, we are hoping to have some dentistry whiskey meetings here in Scotland, and there are some distilleries that have phenomenal lecture facilities. So that is going to happen. You know, when we open our casks, eventually that's going to happen. But I think a dentistry whiskey trip to Nova Scotia would just be fabulous. It would be fantastic.
Superb. Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Can I put my name down now?
It's down.
You have to perform for us, so that's the only thing. We'll have to have a Kaylee. See if we can get CBC interested in covering the event.
Well, I'm pretty sure that if the Glenora Distillery finds out that Alasdair Gillies is coming back to town, they'd probably roll out the carpet for you.
Wow. Nice to think that. I think memories won't be lasting that long. You know, I go back to the mid-70s, late 70s, so I've probably forgotten all that. So many things have happened since then.
Oh, no, I think you'll have. I'm sure there's a lot of people that still remember the show. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's been really fantastic. Yeah. And the great thing about Canada too, when I was going around there, well, I took the train trip right across east to west.
Mm-hmm.
Stopped off in different places, and certainly it was the mid 70s. The courtesy of everyone was fantastic. The kindness. You would go into a ticket office in the station. You would say, "How far are you going to go today?" "I'll go to Jasper." "Well, I booked you a hotel. You get to Jasper at midnight. Hotel booked." This was a ticket clerk. I mean, so many lovely things happened there. And then going to Winnipeg and meeting the Burns Club in Winnipeg. I ended up going out and doing a concert for them. It's great country. And it's a huge country.
It really is. My dad made that comment earlier. That's my father. Good evening, Father. He's in British Columbia, so if we have a Canadian trip, I'm sure we'll see you there.
Oh, fantastic. Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I would love this to keep going, and I think we must meet again and do this again and revisit some either Cape Breton, Glen Breton, or other distilleries. But it's been fascinating to not only drink the whiskey, but just to hear a few of your stories, Alasdair, and a little bit more about this fantastic duality of careers in music and in dentistry. It always very remarkable in these nights. I look at the time and think we've been talking for an hour and 50 minutes. Yet I still feel there's so much that we could talk about and things we could ask and things we could learn. But obviously we can't. We can't keep going forever, otherwise, we may drink too much, which is always a risk.
This whiskey can now a treat. This is the last one, the Skye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm amazed how good it is, but yeah.
Is that the Talisker Skye?
Yeah, it's less volatile than I thought it was going to be. It's smoother. It's got quite a toffee, peppery.
This is what I'm saying. I think if we had started with this at the beginning of the evening, because when I was gifted the bottle of this, I opened it, poured it, sampled it, and I thought, this is too strong. I can't drink this. I now find that as long as I don't start my evening with it, I can really enjoy it at the end of a couple of drams. I have to admit, though, that the thing that got me into being able to drink the Talisker Skye, I don't know if I should admit this or not. I may cause a bit of a riot online, but I made some cocktails. So I was using it with a bit of ginger beer, a slice of lime, a slice of orange, and you could really still get the smokiness and the profile from the whiskey coming through the ginger beer. But it was very palatable. So if I enjoyed a couple of the cocktails, I could then quite easily have a dram of it later on in the evening. I'm not one for mixing my whiskies. I would never necessarily advocate that, certainly with an age statement. But it's certainly one suggestion. If anybody, I know Andy who works in 4D Lab. He's got a couple of bottles of Talisker Skye and has said the same thing. He finds it very difficult to drink, so why not use it for some whiskey cocktails and enjoy it? Well,
I'm taking this neat according to your recommendation, and I'm amazed I'm doing that. I'm sipping it and going down the street. I always think, but people say, "Oh, I take a Coke in my whiskey," and it fills me with the horrors. However, my reply to them is, it's the only way to drink Coke.
Absolutely. I've not had a whiskey and coke for many years. I would occasionally, back in my youth, order one at a nightclub or whatever. But of course, the whiskey you were getting was Bell's or Grant's or something like that. So you get a bit of a taste of the whiskey, but it's not expensive or special whiskey. So again, I don't have a major issue mixing a Talisker Skye with a bit of ginger beer. I don't think there's any great harm in that.
I got to see if I can grab a Talisker Skye so I can try it. It sounds interesting. I like to compare it against the Storm and the Temp.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I've been trying really hard, but I've yet to find a whiskey that I don't like. I'll keep trying.
I think I'd find a Lowland one I'm not very keen on, but I won't go into that.
Now, obviously, we are still living through the pandemic. Have you had inoculations, Alice, or have you managed to get?
Yes, I had my vaccination last Tuesday. Yep. And then, of course, all this nonsense comes on the media about, maybe it's not such a good one to have for over 65s. And it seems to become quite a political issue.
Yeah.
And they seem also to be moving the protocol a bit, to be 3 weeks the booster, and then 12 weeks the booster, and then WHO say, no more than 6. So make up your mind, please, because the public is getting confused.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I think you would be interested, Mike, in particular, with your interest in phobias. I cannot believe, and even tonight I watched a news bulletin, someone getting the first vaccination in Ulster, and there was a nurse going, needle 3 inches long, arm. I'm going to give me a close up. Please, what are you doing? Who on earth directed you to do that? I just can't believe it. Anyone who had a phobia couldn't possibly turn up next day for a vaccination.
That reminds me, Alistair, of an interview I once did on an Irish radio station about dental phobia. And if you've ever done a radio interview, you're on hold on the phone and you hear the radio station in the background as you're waiting to be introduced. And as part of their introduction, they played the scene of Dustin Hoffman in the chair in Marathon Man. Is it safe? And the noise of the drill, is it safe? And he goes, hello, Michael, how are you doing? And great to have you on the show. We're talking about dental phobia. What would you say to all the dental phobics out there? And I said, there aren't any dental phobics listening anymore. You scared them all away. Oh, really? Would that be enough to make them turn over? Yes. Apologies to anybody Irish for my Irish accent. But yes, the media love a good needle, absolutely. But I think, obviously it's very difficult for them with the vaccine program, and I think it's that they're looking at numbers, and I think this disparity in the number of weeks between the first and the second dose is more to do with getting as many people getting the first dose as possible. And I guess as a population, more of us who've had one dose is better than a small number who've had both. Yeah. Perhaps not as good for the individual, but certainly better for the populace. So I don't know.
Yeah.
As you say, it's confusing. It is confusing. Mixed messages.
In Canada, you're locked down as much as we are?
No, their lockdown in Canada is provincial dependent. Right now in Nova Scotia, we only, I think we have less than 20 active cases. And I don't know what today's numbers were, but we had a number of 0 cases over the last couple of number of days. So we're almost business as usual now. If you go towards Ontario and Quebec, where the population is higher, they have lockdowns, which is somewhat similar to what the UK is. We've been very fortunate in Nova Scotia to be smart about it. We had fast lockdowns last year. We were out of work for 3 months as they basically had a quarantine provincial-wide. And then once we got it cleared out, the entire Atlantic Canada was a bubble for a number of months because Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, PEI, and New Brunswick had 0 cases. So we did really, really well until the second wave came in. So, as you said before, Canada is so big that we're treated differently in different ways. But as it stands right now, we're not being hit as hard as what the UK is or what Europe is. They're trying to get it under control in certain provinces with mixed success. But what I will say is Nova Scotia is, and they found this, that in the world, we are one of the safest places to be when it comes to COVID because of this decision we made. And incidentally, from a business point of view, one of the big banks in Canada did a study of 2019 and come to find out that what we did has allowed us to not have as much of a recession as the rest of Canada. Mm-hmm. So, when this is all over, or on the way of it being over, Nova Scotia is still one of the best places to be.
Right. Good to hear.
There you go. So are you still, I take it you're still having to do the full PPE and fallow time and things, or is that not so much of an issue?
We have no fallow time. We have the PPE and we have the wipe down, we have the shields, we have the gowns, but the fallow time for us has been not important because we're not dealing with cases. We put a tremendous amount of weight on screening. And the province itself has put a lot of emphasis on screening. So we have made allowances for our patients if they don't pass screening to be brought into the office in a timely manner. But fallow times are basically not an issue around here. Mm-hmm. So we're business as usual for the most part outside of screening. We put a lot of pressure on that, a lot of pressure, unfortunately, on the front staff. And our community to deal with that. But as it stands right now, we are full out. Now that being said, because we are closed up for 3 months and because of the number of patients we see, we're still 4 months behind on treatment, which is unfortunate for the patients that I've seen for the last 25 years. They're still waiting 3.5 to 4.5 months to come in and see us.
Yeah. That's hard. You must be in the midst of all this, Alasdair, pretty glad that you're at the other end of it all.
Well, at the other end of it all means, I can't get dental treatment myself. I can't get a haircut. You can see.
I can help you out with one of those things. I'm great with a pair of scissors.
I don't know if I trust you as a hairdresser.
It is an issue. Mine's getting a bit long as well at the back here, so it's not ideal. Well, I guess, gentlemen, we're approaching the 2 hour mark. So, thank you to anybody that has stuck us out all the way to the end. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I do want it to keep going, but I realise everybody has a life and needs to get back to what they're doing. Alasdair, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mike, for organising this. It's absolutely super. And the ingredients for yourself and Paul and the other added ingredients here behind me have been absolutely fantastic. Really, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Paul.
I'd like to thank you, Alasdair. And as a little aside here, I'd like to say that from what I've seen a very professional dentist have a remarkable secondary career that has been fulfilling in both ways. And for some of us who have secondary careers, it's nice to see that it can be both rewarding and doable. So I want to thank you as a living example of what can be done.
I appreciate that very much, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, indeed. Now, if you recall the other night, Alasdair, you had told me there was a little song that was a farewell whiskey song. Is it too late in the evening to persuade you to sing a song, or have we imbibed you enough that I might be able to
maybe too much, in fact. But this is one that I recorded years and years ago, called "Have a Dram Before You Go." It seems like
that sounds perfect.
Oh, the time has passed so quickly, and the music's been just fine. But the cold grey land o' Caithness can be cruel and unkind. So we must say farewell again, travel through the ice and snow. Say button up and I be cheery, and have a dram before you go. Say button up and I be cheery, and have a dram before you go. So good night, and God go with you and watch over you until we can all be here together, and our glasses we will fill. We will drink a toast to absent friends, and let the beer and whiskey flow. Say button up and I be cheery, and take a dram before you go. Say button up and I be cheery, and take a dram before you go. Say button up and I be cheery, and take a dram before you go. Slainte.
Slainte. Good night, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Rumba, cooka, rumba, kika, rumba, 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 hoppa, rumba, hika, rumba, 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 cooka, rumba, kika, rumba, 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 rumba,